Across the length and breadth of this island nation, a powerful chorus is rising. From the bustling streets of Kingston to the quiet parishes, Jamaicans are demanding more from their government. The message is clear and unwavering. No more sleaze, no more backhand deals, and an absolute end to the crippling disease of corruption that has plagued our progress for far too long. This isn't just a fleeting moment of anger, it's a profound awakening. It's the collective voice of a people who have watched promise after promise dissolve into personal enrichment for a select few. They are tired of seeing their national potential squandered, their resources mismanaged, and their trust betrayed. The frustration is palpable, etched on the faces of everyday citizens who work hard, pay their taxes, and dream of a better Jamaica, only to be met with headlines of another scandal, another misuse of public funds. This is a demand for a fundamental reset of the social contract between the governed and those who govern. But this groundswell of public demand forces us to ask a difficult introspective question. Is Jamaica really serious about the end to corruption in government? Or is this a cycle of outrage that fades with time, allowing the very systems we protest to persist? Are we, as a people, prepared to do what it takes to dismantle a culture where a bly or a favor from a person in power is seen as a part of life, rather than a crack in the foundation of our democracy? Will we see a time when there are no more corruptions, sleaze, and backhand deals, not just in one administration, but as a permanent standard for all who seek to lead? The challenge is systemic. For decades, the political landscape has been dominated by two major parties, and the perception among many is that corruption is not a partisan issue, but a bipartisan tradition. This creates a deep-seated cynicism, a feeling that no matter who you vote for, the game remains the same, with only the players changing jerseys. To truly break free, we must move beyond partisan loyalty and embrace a national loyalty to integrity and good governance, demanding the same high standards from everyone, regardless of their political affiliation. This is the question we must put to Jamaica's government ministers. Jamaica has come a long way in tackling corruption in government, at least on paper. We have the institutions, the commissions, the laws, but progress cannot be measured by the number of agencies we create. It must be measured by the results they deliver and the trust they inspire. It is time for all Jamaicans, both at home and in the diaspora, to understand and internalize a fundamental truth. The country cannot achieve its full potential. It cannot truly develop when corruption is ripe in Parliament. It is the single greatest obstacle to our national development. A corrupt government, by its very nature, will always do what is best for the personal and political interests of its members. Every dollar diverted from a public project to a private pocket is a dollar stolen from a child's education, a patient's health care, or a community's safety. They do this without fully comprehending, or perhaps without caring about the profound level of harm they are inflicting upon the country and its future generations. When they are in their bubble of corruption, insulated by wealth, privilege, and a circle of enablers, it's sometimes hard for them to see the wrongs that they are doing. This bubble separates them from the reality of the potholed roads they don't have to drive on, the long lines at public hospitals they never have to wait in, and the under-resourced schools their children will never attend. It oftentimes takes someone else, a brave journalist, a diligent auditor general, a relentless civil society group, or the vocal diaspora, to point out the devastating harm that they are doing to the country. These are the voices that must pierce the bubble. Jamaica sometimes loves to compare itself to Singapore. It's a common refrain in political speeches, the vision of transforming from a developing nation to a first-world powerhouse in a single generation. We look at their economic success with envy, but many Jamaicans would have little clue as to how Singapore and other ASEAN countries actually treat corruption in their parliament. The comparison is often only skin-deep. Singapore's success wasn't built on hope and speeches. It was built on an ironclad, non-negotiable commitment to integrity. Their founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, understood that corruption was an existential threat. He established the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, the CPIB, and gave it immense power and independence to investigate anyone, no matter how high their rank. In some of these ASEAN countries, the consequences for corruption are severe, designed not just to punish, but to deter. They seek the death penalty for their government officials for acts of grand corruption, things that in Jamaica might result in a quiet resignation, a party transfer or worse, be completely ignored and turned a blind eye to. There are many prime ministers and high-ranking ministers in the region that have been put in jail for corruption, most famously in Malaysia following the 1MDB scandal. In Vietnam, a high-profile property tycoon recently faced the death penalty for her role in a massive fraud case, while another leader was sacked for a simple yet profound breach of ethics, using a lawyer with a criminal record. These are not just punishments, they are powerful statements about the standards to which leaders are held. Hence, for Jamaica to even begin to start growing like Singapore or other tiger economies, we must adopt their most important foundational principle. We need to develop and, more importantly, enforce a zero-tolerance approach to corruption in government. Not a low tolerance, not a sometimes tolerance, but an absolute zero-tolerance policy with swift, severe, and public consequences. This brings us to the recent and highly controversial 200% increase in wages for our politicians. The justification given was that high salaries would attract better talent and reduce the temptation for graft. The public, though skeptical, has paid the price. Now it's time for Jamaica's MPs, and especially their cabinet ministers, to uphold their end of this bargain, to pack up their private businesses while they are in office. Public service must be their one and only job. A minister cannot effectively run a ministry while also running a construction company, a law firm, or a major import-export business. The potential for conflict of interest is not just a risk, it's a certainty. They must be content with their substantial wages. The argument that they needed outside business to survive is now null and void. They are among the highest-paid individuals in the country, compensated by the taxpayer to do one job: serve the people. Consider this. The Prime Minister of Jamaica is now receiving almost the same pay as the British Prime Minister. Let that sink in. The leader of a nation with a GDP of around $17 billion is paid on par with the leader of a G7 nation with a GDP of over $3 trillion. Hence, why should the Jamaican taxpayer be paying this first-world salary to a prime minister, or any minister, who is preoccupied with running his own private business? How can one person give their undivided attention to the complex challenges of national governance while simultaneously managing personal commercial interests? This divided focus is one of the core reasons why most major public projects are chronically delayed and massively overrun in Jamaica. It's not just about money being stolen, it's about a lack of oversight, poor planning, and a failure to hold contractors accountable. The government ministers are not giving their full, undivided attention to the critical work they are being paid so handsomely to do for the country. Their focus is fractured. Most of their attention, their energy, and their problem-solving skills are taken up with their personal businesses, their private investments, and their own financial growth. The nation's business becomes a secondary concern. It's time for Jamaica to elect and demand leaders who promise to be fully 100% focused on the country's business. We need leaders who see public service as a sacred trust, not a networking opportunity. We cannot afford someone who is looking for a passive income in government, treating a cabinet position as a stable salary that allows them to take risks elsewhere. We must reject the model of a politician who uses their time in office to focus on starting 2 or 3 new businesses, leveraging their connections and inside knowledge for personal gain. This leads to the most troubling pattern of all. A lot of Jamaica's government ministers came into office from humble, even poor backgrounds. They presented themselves as champions of the common man. Many had next to nothing when they first joined the government. Their stories were meant to be inspiring tales of social mobility through public service. But by the time they leave government, after just a few years on a public servant's salary, they are miraculously worth millions of US dollars. This magical transformation defies any logical explanation based on their official income. It's a clear, flashing red light indicating that something is profoundly wrong. It points to a system where influence is sold, contracts are padded, and public office is the most lucrative business of all. This is not right. It is a betrayal of public trust, an insult to every hardworking Jamaican, and it needs to stop now. We need mandatory, publicly accessible asset declarations upon entering and leaving office. We need an integrity commission with real teeth to investigate unexplained wealth. The power to change this rests not just in the halls of Parliament, but on the streets, in our communities, and at the ballot box. It requires sustained pressure, unwavering vigilance, and a collective refusal to accept anything less than total accountability. The fight for a corruption-free Jamaica is the fight for the soul of our nation. It is the fight for a future where our children can thrive, where our institutions are respected, and where the name Jamaica is synonymous not with scandal, but with integrity and progress. That is a future worth fighting for.